Hey everyone, good evening. Hope everyone's doing good today. We had an eventful day, so I'm going to start with a little bit of a story about what we were doing as a family today, and it's adjacent to mental health. But it was interesting because I ran into some mental health stuff outside of the office. I don't know why I'm surprised by that since it's all around us, but it was surprising nonetheless. But so we're going to do a little bit of story time. I'm going to talk a little bit about our topic of the day, which is being comfortable with your body. This came up in relation to another video that I did. And then we're going to, in the middle of it sometime, I want to make sure that I get to our really exciting giveaway. And that's going to be actually available to everybody who watches this stream tonight. So I want to make sure you all have access to this really special, exciting kind of tool that I'm giving out tonight. And so we'll just kind of go with that and roll with it. Please feel free to chat in the comments. I do try to keep up to date with that, but I will also try to keep this live stream moving along. So basically today, me and my family, that's the wife and two kids, we're driving down this road outside our house, and it's just a straight shot, okay? There's like neighborhoods on either side, but it's not twisting and turning. It's just a straight shot, 45 miles an hour, right? And we get to a point where we're almost at like the major intersection. And oh yeah, first of all, welcome to everybody who's in the live stream. Thank you all so much for tuning in tonight. Like I said, I'm just starting with a little bit of story time. We'll talk a little bit about our topic of being comfortable with your body, and we'll also intersperse that giveaway. I'm gonna try to aim for like 9:20-ish, because Jennifer, I know you got to go to class around 9:30, or I don't know if it's 9:30 where you are. 9:30 for me, so I'm gonna try to be cognizant of the time while I talk here. So yeah, 45-mile-an-hour road. We pull up behind this old Mercedes that's oh, it's spring break. Well, congratulations for making it to spring break. So this Mercedes is driving like 20 miles an hour, like to the point where I am really going on the brakes, making sure that we don't hit this car. And, I'm wondering, is there something wrong with the vehicle? Is the driver okay? And so what happens is this driver is a she, stops in the middle of the road, 45 miles an hour, no traffic lights, no shoulder, nothing. She's in the middle of the road. And so, we pull up behind her because it's not safe to pass by her yet. We turn on the hazard lights. It's an old lady. She comes out of her vehicle and comes up to my window. So I roll down the window and I'm thinking like, hey, what's going on? She says she's looking for the Target and doesn't know where it is. So I'm like, okay, maybe she's just new to the area, or maybe she's in an unfamiliar neighborhood. Okay, so I say, yeah, we can, we're right by the Target. It's really like the next turn over. So we say, yeah, I can pull in front of you and you can follow us and we'll take you straight there, because that's the direction we were going anyway. So like I said, it's literally one turn down the road. And so we're not going far. It's not like she has to follow complicated directions or anything. And so we pull in front of her and I get ready to make the turn. But then I notice that she's actually driven by us, like driven past us. And so I'm like, okay, that's weird. Maybe she lost track of the car in the 100 or so feet that we traveled. And so, okay, she's now stopped at a red light, which is just before the main intersection. This is hard to do without Google Maps in front of me, and I'm not going to try to get all fancy and pull that up right now. But so then, okay, we pull up next to her. My wife, I wanted to just go by and say, like, okay, the Target's right there. Like, it's very visible. She can see it and she can figure it out if she turns around. My wife was very persistent on helping this old lady out, and so she encouraged me to pull up next to her vehicle. My wife gets out, knocks on her window and says like, hey, you missed a turn, just follow us and we'll guide you there. So we make this other turn and she's going through this intersection super slow, like 5 miles an hour maybe. And so like I'm already getting ready to turn into Target, and she's behind us again, or she's missed it or something, but she turned the complete opposite direction. So now she's going on her way to like a gas station or something, and now we're all the way in the left turn lane. So I'm wanting to go about my day and like, okay, like she'll figure it out where she's going. And at this point, I'm a little concerned. Maybe she's disoriented. Maybe there's something going on mentally where she's not like able to track or follow directions. Like I thought maybe there was something with her vision, or maybe my wife mentioned that. But so like, I'm telling my wife to call the non-emergency police number at this point. Because like, okay, maybe it's not safe for her to be on the road. First, like she's going super slow on faster roads, and she's not able to really track with directions or follow a vehicle. She didn't seem to really know where she was at, and she's also stopping in the middle of the road sometimes. So definitely like a danger. So my wife convinces me. She's very set on helping this lady and making sure that she's okay. So we pull a couple of turns. I think we U-turned out of the Target parking lot to eventually get back to where she was. We found her in a parking lot. And, after my wife was the one who got out of the car eventually and spoke to her in the parking lot. So after a bit of conversation, I'm not exactly sure what exactly the conversation was because I was staying with the kids, but eventually we got police onto the scene. They were able to talk some of that through. And so my wife, before the police arrived, told me that there were a couple of times where her story was inconsistent, or she had told my wife the general direction of where she lived, and then when my wife referenced that later, she was like, how do you know where I live? So in my mind, I started thinking like Alzheimer's or dementia, something in that realm, where she's not very oriented to where she's at, and obviously her memory's not great either. But eventually what the police decided was that one of them would follow behind her as she drove home. And she wasn't very keen on the idea. She kept saying it was embarrassing and she didn't want the escort, all of that stuff. Um, yeah, Jennifer, definitely. If I maybe this is a bias on my part. If it was a younger person, I probably would have thought drugs or something along that line. But my mind more easily goes to cognitive decline when it comes to someone more elderly. And I know, people who are elderly can abuse drugs just like anybody else. But yeah, that didn't enter my thoughts as much. Um, but so what it ended up being was that the police said that unless there was like an actual traffic violation, they could not force her to do anything. They could not force her to surrender her license. They could not transport her anywhere. And even like if she had really, really wanted to, she could have driven off without the police escort too. And so I do applaud my wife for being very persistent in all this and trying to make sure that she got home okay. There was also a Virginia Department of Traffic guy who happened to be working nearby, who was also very supportive, developing some rapport with that lady and getting her to work with the police to try to keep her safe. Um, but in reflecting on this, some of this brings up some of the issues associated with Prop 1 out in California. Um, because and some of you all who are on the West Coast are probably going to be more familiar with Prop 1, but what I've read is that a lot of the controversy at least comes down to potentially mandatory treatment for people who are picked up off the streets. And so this situation kind of brought it a little more closer to home because of the way she was driving that was unsafe, and the way she was clearly not very certain of where she was going and all of that stuff. There was definitely a risk there, both to herself and to other people who might have been driving around her. And there was a limit to what the officers could do to make sure that she was safe. they said that short of that violation, the best they could do was eventually request a medical review by the DMV. And then if she happened to fail that, then they could suspend her license. But they couldn't do anything in that moment to force the issue, for lack of a better terminology. And so that was an interesting kind of conundrum to run into in terms of mental health, that at least in Virginia, the balance between that freedom and that safety airs more on the individual liberty side, even if it means a potentially greater risk for the person who is elderly versus that bit of safety. So I don't have a clear answer for that, because this is like, that could potentially have life altering consequences for both her and for other people who are on the road. But there's also the sense that we cherish that individual liberty very dearly as well. So I don't know what you all think about that. My wife did tell the officers that I am a counselor, but they did not ask my opinion. They did administer a very simple kind of orientation test, asking her if she knew where she was, what city she was in, what year it was, who the president was, just being oriented to time and place and all of that kind of stuff. And she answered all of those questions perfectly fine. But just when it came to like the very recent conversations, that's where her story was a little bit scattered and all over the place. So definitely some concerns going on there. And obviously with what we had witnessed with her driving. So that's kind of my story for the day, interacting with mental health outside of the office. Let's see. What do I want to do now? Let's jump to the... Yeah. I mean, the first thing that I think, Jennifer and Aaliyah, is that I definitely hope that she got home safely. And I'm glad that here in this city, that we generally have a pretty good relationship with our police officers, and that they're generally trying to be supportive of the community and trying to keep people safe, rather than just, trying to make things more difficult for people or have a very contentious relationship with the citizens. So that would not be true in every city, I would imagine. So I think there are some small blessings in that. But yeah, well, again, I don't know how much to trust her story. Apparently she did say she had children, but that they were grown and she lives on her own. And so that's also, potentially a major risk if she's suffering from some of that cognitive decline and isn't aware of it enough to be able to ask for help. Yeah, absolutely. It was a couple of white officers with an older black lady. So I'm glad to say that they were respectful, and they were, I think they handled themselves well. It was just a situation where it seemed like their hands were tied and they couldn't legally force her to do anything, which I don't think they were really inclined to anyway. Yeah. So difficult situation all around. And, if she had been my client and she had relayed that story to me, I would definitely encourage her to think about some different options about having some care or having someone who lives nearby in case she runs into situations like this again. But again, yeah, it's kind of sad to say that something would have to go wrong before any change would have to happen, unless she were the one initiating that change. Yeah, so that's my story for the day. I will drop a link right now in the live chat, and it's also in the... Oh, okay, sorry. One more question. I keep trying to move on because I'm trying to be cognizant of time. The Lotus Farm wants to know, what would you say to the officers if they asked for my opinion? Okay, so if they wanted my full answer, I would say I would not consider myself competent to treat somebody elderly who is dealing with cognitive decline. I know enough book learning wise to recognize some of the signs, and from some personal experience within my family, that I would say, like, I was fairly confident there was something in that realm going on, but not enough to make a diagnosis on the spot. And I feel like that would be irresponsible too, with us not being in a clinical setting and also not having a full conversation with her. But just based on some of the things that I saw, I would definitely lean in that direction and say, like, I'm concerned for her safety, and anything you all as officers can do to ensure that she gets home safe would probably be of benefit, and if not a necessity for her. But they did not ask my opinion, which is fine. I am completely okay with that. And yeah, I do hope that, maybe she does have family nearby or somebody who can follow up with her and be able to help her secure the support and help that she needs. But it sounds like that was not guaranteed. So yeah, like I said, sticky situation. Sorry, there is cat hair all over the place, so I'm rubbing it out of my eyes, getting it off my face. That's what's happening here. You shed so much. You're a very hairy kitty. Oh. It was funny. One of the comments on one of my recent videos said that Kitty was really cuddly. But, I never thought about him that way, but he's just like, I guess he really is, though. But just with me. So, yes. I am going to drop a link in the chat now before I get distracted. This link is the free giveaway that I was talking about. And I'm doing this early for all of you all who are tuning in to the live stream. This is for Elomia, the AI therapy chatbot that I was talking about. And so I was able to talk with one of the main programmers, I think it was, from Elomia. And so he secured this hookup for us. And this is basically a web browser version of their chatbot that's in development. This is the model that I am using for my videos, testing it and putting it through its paces. And so what this link does is once you sign up for it, that means you get full access to their web version, web demo, I guess I should say, because it's not fully complete yet, to use until the end of May 2024. So that means for all of you all who have talked about maybe having difficulty securing a good therapist in the past, I won't say it's necessarily a good therapist, but if you're looking for some 24/7 availability and some research-backed interventions that you might be able to use, particularly in the CBT realm, then this would be something that may be worth checking out. Yeah, so they are working on releasing a full app version in April or May, and so that's why they're giving this to us until May of 2024. And so yeah, I'm really excited to share that all with you, and I am going to share a link for all of my viewers later on when I start releasing the series of videos that I do with Elomia and testing it and running through all of this different stuff. But as a special thank you for you all who regularly tune into the live streams, I wanted to share that with you all so that you have it for an extra couple of days before everyone else. So yes, keep in mind that it is not complete. They are constantly tweaking it and improving it, and this series of videos is designed to be part of that process of feedback as well. So any of you all's thoughts, please feel free to comment, I guess either in this video or the following videos that'll actually be about Elomia as a product. Comment your feedback and I'll be able to relay that to them, so you get to be part of shaping how this app develops in its infancy. I think their full business model right now is a subscription, and I think their going price is about $100 for a year's worth of access. So I think that if it ends up being like a suitable replacement or a good bridge for having a counselor, then, for most of my clients, $100 is about 3 copays, so 3 visits. And, you get the 24/7 availability. I know that there are other tools included in it as well, including different exercises or goal setting and things like that. So it can be a very kind of positive psychology tool as well in your pocket. But this demo is for the web browser version, I believe. So I have not tested it, like opening up the link on a phone or something. So you all can try that and get back to me on that. But it's a pretty cool piece of software. If nothing else, at least play with it, even if you don't fully trust it for your own mental health yet. But for those of you who are looking for a bridge between therapists or just somebody I say, who's available to chat anytime, then feel free to give this bit of a test run. And you all should have my Instagram as well. If not, it's in the links in my YouTube channel profile, and you can DM me your thoughts as well if you prefer that not to be on a public forum. So yes, with all of that being said, let me jump to the meat of our conversation today, which is mostly about, hey, welcome to the live stream. And if you are coming in a little bit later, feel free to scroll up the live chat a little bit. Oh, I forgot to mention, the link should be in the description below as well. Basically, our giveaway is free access to Elomia, which is an AI therapy chatbot that we've talked about for a little bit. I'm doing a test drive on it, and Elomia has hooked us up with a link where you can sign up and have full access to their web demo version until May of 2024. So that's a month and a half that you get their product for free. And so I'm trying to think back to what video brought this on. Oh, this was the Jesse Hildebrandt Mormon Stories podcast video that brought up, I think, Aaliyah. Hey Natalie, welcome to the live stream. Be sure to check out the link in the description. That's part of our giveaway. And if you watch back just a couple of minutes, you'll see what the giveaway is all about. So, yes, Jesse Hildebrandt was talking about somatic therapies and internal family systems. And I think it was Aaliyah who commented on the video. I don't know. Yeah, okay. Thanks, Aaliyah. I know you had commented on Paige's interview as well, so I didn't know if I was mixing up your thoughts with someone else's comments. But I think now that I'm thinking about it, both of those streams of thought are pretty tied together in terms of those kind of somatic therapies and also what goes on with EMDR. So if you don't mind if I read your comment out loud, if I can find it real briefly, because I want to make sure I'm not misquoting or misrepresenting what you said. And YouTube's not the greatest at... okay, here. Wait. Yes, maybe this is it. Thanks for sharing this part of Jesse's interview. So much of it resonates with me as an ex-Mormon. I'm still in the hyper-independence phase, and intellectually bypassing my emotions is a reflexive. No, I don't think that's exactly the comment that... I was talking about your vivid dreams and nightmares. There was a comment. I'm sorry. YouTube's not great about sorting comments, and I don't want to spend the time searching for the exact comment that's triggered all of this. But yes, Hannon, you said you're recovering from bulimia, and yes, absolutely. I'm so glad. Yes, let me echo what Jennifer's saying, that I'm so glad that you're in recovery. Eating disorders are so, honestly pervasive right now in our society, but also underreported because so much of it can be in the guise of eating healthy, being healthy, or being fit, or just, building a better body, all of that stuff. And And yeah, I don't know a lot about Ramadan except just from what I've heard from, friends in high school. But yeah, I can imagine some of the religious ties back to fasting or maybe even just restricted eating can be especially triggering and difficult. Um, so yeah, thank you for sharing that, and I hope you have a lot of support in this season. Um, and yeah, I can't even imagine how difficult that must be. But I think what Aaliyah was talking about was also like I think there's a lot of ties between a lot of these religions, and I'm not meaning to stereotype as a whole. Mm, yeah, so like a lot of these religions, like uh, like Islam, like Hannon's talking about, if I remember Islam being connected with Ramadan, right? Um, and Mormonism and Christianity, a lot of these have seem to have these historical ties, and I know more about the history of Christianity because that's my faith, but where there was a time when certain beliefs or certain faith backgrounds considered the body to be evil and the spirit to be good. And so the idea was that you punish the body, try to remove yourself as much from your earthly existence as you can in order to move more towards a spiritual plane. And yeah, Hannon, as you're talking about, yes, eating disorders super prevalent. And yeah, Jennifer and Hannon, what you're talking about, yes, men can absolutely struggle with eating disorders, body dysmorphia, um, but it does tend to be in the opposite direction of trying to bulk up, trying to gain weight. And yeah, I've heard stories of like college and pro football players eating tens of thousands of calories a day. You're talking about like linemen and offensive and defensive tackles, guys whose scholarships or livelihoods are riding on them being able to be big and still be able to move. And then, when they retire and they don't have to maintain that weight, there are just so many problems from their joints being able to keep up with that kind of weight and being able to move as a professional athlete, and not to mention all of the doping and the drug use that comes with trying to be strong, trying to recover faster, trying to gain more weight, bulk up even more. So yeah, um, yeah. So this is not a background on eating disorders so much, but I wanted to talk about how we might be able to engage with our bodies in a more mindful way. Okay, yeah, there we go. Thank you, Aaliyah. I don't know how you found it, but I definitely could not. Yes, my approach to helping clients work through resistance around somatic processing. So, this does sound like it came from the Jesse Hildebrand video, where Jesse Hildebrand was talking about how they found a lot of healing past, just cognitively processing it, but really experiencing the emotions in their body, allowing themselves to feel it, and then validating it. And so I have one client in particular that, as you asked that question, Aaliyah, just sprang to my mind because they also have a lot of history around honestly hating their body and feeling uncomfortable with it. They have had difficulty with their gender identity, and they every time we've tried to do mindfulness exercises as a way of trying to cope with anxiety, as a way of trying to allow their body to relax and allow themselves to feel that anxiety without having to act on it, they have been extremely uncomfortable in every circumstance that we've tried to be mindful. And I do think that eventually, if they would like to heal, that ability to accept that discomfort within their body is going to be super important. But I am at a bit of a loss with them in terms of how to overcome that barrier, which Aaliyah, it sounds like a very similar challenge to what you're facing. And feel free to correct me if that's not what your experience is right now. Um, and so I don't have a very clear answer to that yet. We've processed the experience, talked about where they're feeling that kind of difficulty. And so right now, they're just a blank no. They're not willing to go there, and that's not where they feel comfortable right now. And that's okay. As having a decent rapport with them, I feel like that's not something I have to push on right now because they have more immediate stuff that we can be productively working on, and I don't have to keep beating my head against that wall. And but I do think long term, and I think they agree also that long term, that having access to and allowing themselves to have access to their emotions without it being a bad or a dangerous or an unsafe thing is important for their mental health, but they're just not there yet. And so I think the first thing that's important for someone who's dealing with that is to recognize that that's okay. Not in the sense of like we want it to stay that way, but like if that's where you are, then that's okay. And that doesn't mean you're stuck until you get past it. That there's other work that you can be doing that's equally beneficial, and that it doesn't have to be something that you attack head on right away. And that's part of the whole mindfulness thing too, is right, like accepting the way things are. And if things feel really difficult for you within that mindful space right now, then that's okay as well. It doesn't mean you have to be good at it or be accepting of it right away either. Wow. And you talk about underreported traumas and challenges, sexual violence as well. So, Aaliyah, thank you for sharing how that's affected your view of yourself, and that kind of trauma response where you feel like your body is to blame or you're to blame when that was done to you, and it wasn't your fault, but it still feels that way. Um, hmm. Wow, okay. Sorry, there's a lot of different threads of conversation going on right now, and I'm trying to think which one I want to follow up with. Um, how about this? I'm going to try to keep talking along my lines of what I'm thinking in terms of how we can um, work around our anxiety around our bodies, and then I'll try to latch onto any conversation trails later on because I'm just going to go all over the place if I try to follow the chat in real time. So, like I said, the first thing is it's important for me to validate where they are at in terms of their approach and their relationship with themselves and their feelings. It's okay that you don't feel okay with yourself, I think is basically the way I would sum it up. Um, and it's okay to acknowledge that like, I would like to eventually be okay with myself. And I would like to move towards that, but I don't know how and I don't know if it's possible. That's all right as well. And so it's kind of counterintuitive for me because my answer to that is also like more mindfulness, but maybe in a different way. I would, I do know that my client that I was talking about did say that especially sitting still and breathing was especially anxiety provoking for them. So we explored that a little bit, and there was something about, I think, the quiet of just sitting with their thoughts that made them feel edgy, and especially that they started gaining more of an awareness of their body, which, in a vacuum is kind of what you want in mindfulness, but that triggered something in them because they were very uncomfortable with how their body looked. I didn't know whether to go present tense or past tense with that. They were very uncomfortable with how their body looked and how they perceived their body. And so there's something in the realm of body dysmorphia there. And so we delved into some of the beliefs that they had about their body, their relationship with themselves. But again, I think we were hitting a similar wall that Jesse Hildebrandt was talking about, where they had processed it up to the wazoo in terms of cognitively, because this client had also been in therapy for a very long time and predated working with me. They had talked about this stuff. They know up here that those thoughts are not what they want to tell themselves. And one of the things that was very striking was that they said, "I know those thoughts are wrong. Those kinds of thoughts, right?" And that's where I jumped in and I really keyed in on that and saying like, "Okay, look, if you think that way, that's fine. That's how you think. But the fact that you are judging your thoughts, like you have thoughts judging your thoughts, that they're wrong, I shouldn't think that way, that's adding pressure onto yourself. That's adding another expectation of, okay, first you have this thought of, I don't like how my body looks. And then you add this extra layer of thought of, oh, I shouldn't think that about myself. And then that naturally adds another layer of, wow, what a kind of person am I that I think about this about myself. And then, it builds and builds on itself. And then you have this anxious response because you had this initial thought of, I don't like how my body looks. And then you followed it right up with, I shouldn't think that way about myself. And so so when we talked about that, I think it helped a little bit. But where it is, it's like mindfulness allows us to first access that and recognize that we're even telling ourselves these things. If we had never delved into trying to sit with our bodies, then that client would never have realized there was that extra layer of thought. It would have just been, I don't feel comfortable with my body. And then I wouldn't have known, they wouldn't have known that there was anything else going on. But that extra layer of judgment, whether it comes from culture, whether it comes from my own sense of expectations about my body, or whether it comes from my religion, or the way I was raised by my parents, it can be helpful to be able to identify that source or that voice and then be able to say, that's not me talking, that's my old religion talking, that's my old or like that's my mother talking, that's my father talking, that's a message I got from somewhere else, and that's not me. That can be empowering, and that's a bit of a diffusion technique where we can say something like, oh, that's just the story that my religion told me, that my body's evil, or something like that. And that helps us to get a little bit of separation from it, because when it's just in our brains, I found this with my clients, everything feels real because it feels like it's coming internally. But all of that internal dialogue has been shaped by the things that we've heard, the things that we've been told so many times that they sound true even if they're not. And so, Aaliyah, like you're talking about, yeah, I know those thoughts are wrong. That's where I have a lot of difficulty with CBT sometimes, because it's so easy. I don't think it was designed to be this way, but it so easily strays into the realm of, these thoughts are wrong, I should not think them, and I am causing my own anxiety, depression, eating disorder, whatever you want to call it, right? Because I just can't think the right thoughts. And so that's why I always try to pair any CBT work with mindfulness, to say like, be able to accept what you're thinking, be able to accept what you're telling yourself, and then we can say like, when the resistance is lower, then we can quiet the voices a little bit, quiet the dialogue and the arguing a little bit, so that we have a little more flexibility, a little more freedom of movement, if you will. It's not so constricting. That was kind of all over the place. I hope some of that made sense. Client with health anxiety. I'm trying to think back, Aaliyah. I don't have any clients currently. And let me make sure I'm hearing you right. If you're talking about health anxiety, are you talking about maybe like what, like hypochondriacs? Maybe people who are just very conscious about what they're putting in their bodies and exercising a lot, like almost like an eating disorder, just kind of more generalized. Hmm. Now that you mention it, I don't think I've ever. I know for certain that's never been one of my clients' like target goals. But then I guess a client wouldn't really ask, "Hey, help me be unhealthy," either. Uh, oh, yeah, yeah. Okay. Jennifer, thank you for clarifying, and Aaliyah, thank you for adding on to. Okay. So this is the part where I'll start trying to respond to what I missed already. Okay. Um, Ooh, okay. So I scrolled up a little bit, and Hannon, I think something what you said is really interesting. You made a dress form with your own measurements, and you were shocked that it wasn't really as fat as you thought or felt. Oh, yeah. Outside perspectives are so powerful when it comes to these things. Um, so thank you for sharing that. That's actually really cool that you made that dress form and it was a revelation to you. So thank you for sharing that. Um, Uh, yes. Starting with very mild things. Yeah. So, one of the things I'm considering doing with this client that I was talking about before is more along the lines of grounding techniques. So, not quite to the point of like, I'm just going to exist and be aware of it, but intentionally doing things with my body. And that might be where, Ali, I know you were skeptical, but maybe where some of the things like the bilateral stimulation from EMDR, like Paige shared, might be helpful, where it's less about awareness, but just intentionally moving your body in certain ways. And it doesn't necessarily have to have an effect, like in terms of calming, but I would think of it more as exposure to, yeah, like you're talking about, yeah, yoga would definitely count. I would definitely think like progressive muscle relaxation, yoga, things just intentionally moving your body and being comfortable with that. Um, I encourage them to start taking walks outside. And that had a benefit for them before it turned into winter and got super cold and they couldn't do it anymore. Um, but, all of this is what I'm talking about now at this point is kind of off the top based on my impressions with that client and what I've worked with them on directly. And so that was something that we came up with together and not necessarily like you'd find that in a textbook telling you how to deal with this. Um, so so the mindfulness answer to Aaliyah, what you're talking about. Well, yeah, that might be why. 2.5 feet of snow. My kids want snow so badly. We've had 2 years without it. Um, so maybe we need to come out to where you are, Jennifer. Mm, yeah, and and this is where I also think like a sup- an honestly supportive community would be really powerful for some of these things that you all are talking about, where it doesn't have to be a clinical setting, but where if you're in a yoga group or like a walking group, something like that. Colorado. Shoot. Um, but like where people are giving honest and supportive feedback and applauding your progress in terms of like, hey, yeah, like that's awesome that you've come out like 2 weeks in a row. We love having you here. Hope you can come back. Making it not about your body so much. Because I think even when it comes to yoga or walking, like all of the tracking stuff with like Fitbits and Apple Watches and stuff has a tendency to statistify it too much, where everything becomes a competition. Like, I gotta do better than I did yesterday. I gotta do better than the other people in my class. And, there are even. I was part of a kickboxing gym once where, they have the leaderboard of like who had the highest heart rate or kept their heart rate in the proximal or the maximal zone the longest or something like that. And it just becomes like that works for some people, but for somebody who's already struggling with their body, all of that gamifying and putting numbers to everything can be really unhelpful, because you can take one of those down days or where you're not feeling your best or where you just didn't have a great day and have that be very discouraging instead of just another day where you just didn't feel great. Hannah, this is very ironic coming from your screen name. Um, so all that to say, I don't have any perfect answers to Aaliyah's original problem. The mindfulness answer is to delve into that anxiety when you start feeling like, oh, I have this feeling in my leg when, when I'm sitting here. And if I immediately jump to blood clot, then explore that feeling a little bit. Okay, if you're actually in pain and you have a blood clot, then you go call 911. But if it's just that anxiety about it, then okay, delve into that anxiety. Where am I feeling that anxiety? What does it feel like? Okay, I'm feeling my heart race more. I'm feeling like a pulse in my leg or, something like that. And just really digging into like, what is that feeling? What does it make me want to do? The analogy that I use, and I actually do this myself in a weird way. When summer hits, this area is flooded with mosquitoes. It sucks. We get mosquitoes, not snow. And what I tell my clients is, imagine if you have a bug bite, and we're never mindful of bug bites. All we do is we feel it, we scratch. But if you take a second to really dig into the feeling of that bug bite, what does itching actually feel like? Why does it prompt this response of me wanting to scratch right away? Like really digging into the mechanisms of it and like removing meaning from it. And it's just like, what is this feeling? That's the kind of curiosity that we're trying to foster with mindfulness. Like, yes, it's uncomfortable, but why? Like, what is it about this feeling that feels so uncomfortable? What's going on with that? And so the key word for mindfulness is curiosity for me. That's what I'm trying to foster in my clients. Curiosity about myself, my feelings, my discomfort, my difficult feelings. Sorry, I don't see a screen name for you. If this is outside the topic, feel free to not answer. What about the opposite? What about dangerous health issues and not caring? Oh yeah, see, I've had plenty of clients who have that. um, I guess it depends on how dangerous you're talking. I am not a medical doctor, so I couldn't diagnose, how risky that is from. Oh, geez. Um, well, that's scary. Um, okay, let me think through this really quick. If I had a client, oh, geez. Well, I'm sorry to hear that things are feel so hopeless that it's hard to even care about your own health. That's a really scary place to be. So, I mean, first of all, thank you for being here. And that is obviously a really pertinent question to your experience. So, thank you for sharing that. And man, I hope there can be something helpful here that you get from that. Here's the difficult thing, and this is something that I struggle with all of my clients from time to time. I can't make my clients care. And that refers to, their health, as in your situation, or their mental health, as in a lot of my clients. Some of them are there because their parents told them they need to be there. Some of them are there because their spouses told them they need to be there. I can't make them care. But what I can have a conversation with them about is like, okay, well, tell me about the things that you're passionate about. Tell me about the things that you care about. Um, what is something that we can work towards in our time together? And maybe there's something in that we can work towards, something in that we can do to make your life a little bit better. Um, and maybe they're feeling snarky that day and they say, my goal is to get my wife off my back. And I say, okay, that's fine. If your goal is to get your wife off of your back, what needs to change for that to happen? And see, now I'm rambling a little bit. When it comes to health issues, I can't force you to get treatment. I can't force you to, you know, go see your doctor, if you need regular appointments to check in on how your condition is going. Yeah. Thank you, Jennifer, getting that, I guess, solution focused. Maybe some motivational interviewing in there. Uh, yeah, that's a hard situation when you're talking about a potentially life threatening illness. And the thing I'll say is that, like, I don't know if it's a chronic or an acute thing. I don't know whether it was unpredictable or was kind of on the radar for you when it comes to your diagnosis. Um, Depression can come along with some serious health diagnoses as well, because for all the technology that we have, sometimes disease just feels unconquerable or unbeatable or just inevitable. And that sense of helplessness and hopelessness can really lead to a depression. And so, for clients who are in that kind of situation, I would say I can't manufacture that hope for you. I can't manufacture that sense that, things are worth living for. But what you can do is open yourself to experience something greater than yourself. And that's not a perfect answer, and it's not always going to be life saving. But again, I love to lean on community. If you have a family who cares for you and loves you, um, and you're worried that you're a burden on them or that it would just be easier for them if you were gone, I'd say that's something that we can talk about and that's something we can work with, because that may not necessarily be true. They may not be thinking that that could be the guilt of the medical bills piling up, the constant appointments piling up. That could be all of that talking. If you have a faith community, I know here in our live chat we're pretty split on our relationships with religion, but that can be very life-giving for some people to feel like you can pray to God, or that you can find comfort in your spiritual community. Um, and other things too. If you find passion in a hobby, or creating for someone else, or creating for yourself, those are all things. And I reference man's search for meaning so often, because I think that's really something that a lot of my clients miss, is that a lot of them are living just within the confines of their bodies. And I think that really takes something out of the human experience to not be part of community, or just to be focused on how things affect me. And I do hope that people who are religious and non-religious can agree on that humans are designed not to just live in isolation, just focused on ourselves. And that can be a very limiting experience. And I find that that's a challenge that a lot of my clients run into, is that I'm just focused on my feelings and only focused on how things make me feel. But again, man, I love this community so much. You guys are all so supportive, and it's amazing. Like, I don't even need to be here, and you all just rock it. So thank you all so much for chiming in the comments. I will say, in terms of the mindfulness too, allow yourself to feel those things. Allow yourself to feel like, you know, when things feel really dark, it's okay to feel that way. Like, you're dealing with some very heavy stuff. And it would be really weird if you didn't feel any kind of way about it. That's how I normally explain to my clients. It's like, I would be very concerned if you didn't feel some kind of way about having a potentially terminal diagnosis. So allow yourself to feel that way. I'm not encouraging you necessarily to dwell on it, but allowing yourself to feel that can be empowering in a way that allows it to pass and not have to stick around for so long. If there are times where you have to grieve or have to mourn for maybe lost opportunities, regrets, whatever it is, that's okay too. So, yeah, I don't know. Sometimes talking less is better in my field. And, I'm not your counselor, but I do hope you have somebody who can listen as you're talking through these things. And I do hope that, if you don't have somebody, that your doctor can recommend somebody, because there's absolutely a mental health component when it comes to dealing with potentially the end of someone's life. Someone who's there to just listen and be there with you as you're struggling through some really hard times in your life. So yeah, I just want to echo what everyone else said. Thank you for sharing. And I don't know, maybe I hope the conversation is helpful for you. And even if we don't give you anything actionable to go out and say, like, oh, this is going to fix your life, I don't think that exists. But I hope you can feel that people do care. And yeah. Oh, wow. Yeah. Well, like I said, you all are amazing. Don't got much more to say than that. It's a privilege to be able to host these live streams and just see what comes out of these chats. So I didn't plan for this to turn into a support group. And, obviously we don't have any of the confidentiality rules that a support group would normally require. So if you all want it to turn in that direction, I can't officially sanction it as such. But I think that's kind of where we're at right now. And so I do hope this can continue to be a place where people can share honestly. And of course, protect yourself online. We can't control who comes in here and who doesn't. But, for those of you who are here regularly, I think you've seen this happen over and over again, that people are encouraged to share and are met with love and care. And that's amazing to find online among a group of random people. So thank you all for making that possible. And I'm just glad to be able to help facilitate that. So I'm going to drop that link again. All of you, please feel free to use it, especially anyone who feels like maybe they don't have an immediate connection to a mental health professional. I'm not saying this is a mental health professional that I'm linking here, but it's free access to some tools that may be helpful in the meantime while you're trying to get connected. So thank you all for coming out tonight. I didn't plan for this to go for an hour, but I think it was worth the conversation. I hope some of it was helpful for most of you. And thank you for tuning in. I'll see you all next time.